One man, one mission, to rid the world of chronic anxiety once and for all. The Anxiety Guy, Dennis Simsek, shares his personal transformation from living a life filled with overwhelming worry to becoming a full-fledged positivity machine, a leading authority in generalized anxiety. Dennis gets to the truth of your mental health challenges and sets you on a path to transforming each and every area of your life. Here he is, the one and only, the Anxiety Guy.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Anxiety Guy podcast. This is episode number 7. I'm Dennis Simsek. Thank you so much for joining me. Make sure to subscribe to this Anxiety Guy podcast so you'll get all the updates on all the episodes. As well, you can join us on our Facebook page, our growing community of people there looking to become inspired, looking to overcome their fears. And that is under The Anxiety Guy on Facebook or Twitter, whichever one you prefer. And with that said, let's get to episode number 7. Now, episode number 7 has to do with panic attacks. And I want to kind of fill you in on some of my personal experiences with panic attacks, but I also want to fill you in on one of the most important steps, actually 3 steps, the 3 most important steps when it came to panic attacks for me that worked almost as soon as I started to use it. And until that time, I was always in the moment, in reaction, and when panic attacks struck, automatic response was that, you know what, this is something catastrophic. This is something that might, put me under 6 feet under, and I might be dead any second now. So, I was always calling my support group, which was my fiance or my mom or something like that, to try to take care of me. And when that didn't work, I would call the emergency and they would take me into the hospital. And next thing you know, after calming me down and after the adrenaline rush kind of faded, I realized, you know what, I'm not bad right now, I'm okay, and I kind of got sent home. So that was kind of a cycle there when it came to panic attacks for me. And one incredible instance was when I was actually training. I was practicing tennis, and I halfway through my practice, I started to feel extremely uptight, and I started to feel a lot of tension, and I could feel the cycle taking place because it always sort of started with some curiosity, my panic attacks. I was always curious, what is that feeling? What is that symptom? And back then, I didn't make the connection between the symptom and my anxiety. So I always thought, through my research online and always looking up the worst possible things that happen to people, I always thought that was me. That was going to happen to me as well. So that was the first kind of reaction when panic struck, and it kind of snowballed from there. And it led to confusion, and then it led to basically trying to find an answer right then and there. And because I couldn't find an answer, my adrenaline just kind of kicked in, and next thing you know, I was going 100 miles an hour, and there was no way of stopping this, huge full-speed train that was just taking off. And I started to get really dizzy, off balance, and I always thought that this was it. This moment was it. And luckily for me, once I realized that a panic attack is not a heart attack, it's actually, fear is the main culprit of panic attacks, and it was for me, I started to do a lot better. And next thing you know, I stopped avoiding certain places, certain things, certain environments that used to cause me panic, and the more I stopped doing that, the more my confidence grew, and I started to not have any panic attacks anymore, because on the beginning of the cycle, I started to stop it right before it got to its peak, and that's kind of how panic attacks work. If you have enough knowledge, if you have enough, and I'm not talking about techniques. When I was in therapy for panic attacks, panic disorder, my therapist gave me a lot of techniques. Try this when it happens, try that when it happens, picture this. But techniques don't really grow your confidence. Techniques don't really tame this beast, this monster. And techniques didn't turn, a monster into a fly. And what I realized was I had the choice to look at my panic cycle as either a monster or a fly that was kind of just buzzing around my head. And that visual was pretty huge, and I started to stick to that for a while. But techniques did not help my confidence in my battle against panic. It didn't help my adrenaline, that's for sure. But as well, the connection, being an athlete and being a really active person, which a lot of you guys out there are or were in the past probably, I started to avoid anything that I felt was making my heart beat faster, because that's the subconscious connection that I made after a while. It was almost like a jog, a jog mirrored exactly what a panic attack felt like. So if I was in the supermarket and the panic cycle got going, that feeling was exactly the feeling of what it felt like for me to train for tennis, for instance. And my mind just basically made that connection. So of course, what did I do? I started to avoid anything that was active, anything that was, exercise or weightlifting or going for a bike ride or even walking for a while. I was scared to walk, and I was always checking into symptoms. So if you're out there and you're listening to the Anxiety Guy podcast here, then understand that that connection between the exercise and the panic attack, you got to almost think of it like this. Your heart is a muscle, right? And that muscle needs to be trained just like you used to train any other muscle back in the day. I bet you used to be maybe lifting weights or train your legs and be a runner or whatever it is, or just out there enjoying it as a hobby or something. Understand the connection between that and understand that your heart needs to be trained. So the perspective that you need is basically, if I don't do my activities, if I'm always stuck in fear, if I'm always looking forward to the next big one, then you're always going to be stuck not pursuing the things that really deep down inspire you and interest you. And understand and try to make that connection between I need this, and when I do start to feel fear, when you do start to feel fear in the first couple minutes of, say, your jog or whatever, and your that connection between your panic and exercise is starting to take place, understand that what you're doing is good for you. It's not going to harm you. A panic attack has never killed anyone, and it never will. Okay, so understand the connection between those two, and begin conditioning yourself to look at it from a new angle, if you will. And that really got the wheels turning for me. It was huge, and it started to I started to feel a lot of momentum against my panic attacks. And like I said before, I started to turn a monster into a fly, and it was just buzzing around looking for my attention after a while, and I wasn't interested. And I'm hoping that after this video, you guys will start to feel the same way as you listen to this episode and download it and take it with you wherever you go. But there were 3 steps that I mentioned earlier that I wanted to share with you guys. Aside from having a new perspective when it came to panic attacks, these steps are really important. The first step when it came to my panic attacks was to allow, and this step takes some practice. You almost need to allow the thoughts to take place. Remember, we have over 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and of course some of those are going to be fearful. and allowing the symptoms to take place, allowing those sensations to take place and to take their, to let them happen, allowing the thoughts to happen, and not reacting to them, and not paying them respect, and not showing them that, giving them the importance that they crave. So step one is vital. Step one, allow, is basically going to set you on a new path. It's going to take you away from reacting. It's going to take you away from, remember that snowball effect, the adrenaline kicking in and getting, more and more hectic. So allow is basically going to just level you out, and it's not going to get you any more spikes as far as your adrenaline rushes go. And it's not going to keep, it's not going to keep that cycle turning. So allow is huge. And then comes step number two. Step number two, and we talked about exercise a bit earlier. Step number two is what I like to call focused distraction. Now, focused distraction I'll give you an example of what it was for me. What I did was, in that moment, I took about 10 minutes and I said, you know what? I'm going to do a physical exercise to get some of that adrenaline out and use some of that panic for good rather than internalizing it, to get it out of my system. So basically I had to do something physical, and I decided to jog. So I said, I'm going to jog from here to the supermarket, which is about 5 minutes from here. And I'm going to jog there and I'm going to jog back. But I also had to have a challenge behind it. So I had to say, you know what? I'm going to go to that supermarket and I'm going to come back within, say, 12 minutes or whatever it is. Or for you, it could be a bike ride, and I'm going to bike along my seawall or whatever it is for 7 minutes. I'm going to keep track of the time, and once 7 minutes happens in one direction, I'm going to turn back and do the 7 minutes back in the other direction. And make sure that when it comes to focused distraction, you always have the two parts to it. You have the physical part, but you also have the challenge behind it. And that's key. And that's the power behind it, because you have the physical aspect and you have that focused aspect where you're focusing on trying to overcome a certain goal in a certain amount of time. Okay, so, and as well, if you guys have any other questions on this, anxietyexit.com, you guys can always reach me from there and ask me more on these pointers, these tips here. And number three is let the storm pass. Just like any other storm that comes, the storm always goes. And when you look at your panic cycle as a storm, kind of a windy storm where it's kind of chaotic for a while, and then understanding that every storm calms down after some time, and not rushing the recovery, kind of just, going with the flow, just having confidence, and not judging it by how much time it's taking, why it's still lingering and all that sort of stuff. And these 3 steps, of course, guys, is not going to be, conditioned in you in a day. It's going to take some time before your body goes, okay, first one, I'm going to allow. Second one, focus distraction. Third one, I'm going to let the storm pass. And those 3 steps, when you start to implement them, they're going to become automatic. And once they become automatic, you're going to start becoming less interested in your panicky, fearful thoughts, your catastrophic, obsessive thinking. Because the goal here is to condition your mind to understand that there is no real danger. Okay? And because you have panic attacks, your mind always makes the connection between the panic and the symptom that is lingering and the thoughts, and next thing you know, this spiral just goes on and on. So apply focused distraction, and let the storm pass, because the storm always passes. It's there for a little bit of time, but understand that if I can overcome panic attacks, if I can overcome panic disorder, guys, after suffering for just over 6 years, trust me, anybody out there can, because I was a 7, an 8, a 9, a 10 on the scale as far as my anxiety went. And now I'm able to control my mind, control my thoughts, pick which thoughts I need to give respect for, which thoughts are productive, which thoughts are going to take me down a negative route, a pessimistic route, something that's not going to help me. And I've been able to separate those and gain some control in my life, and basically stop living in a world of reaction. I finally understood that a thought doesn't necessarily mean my reality. Okay? Just because I think a thought doesn't mean that thought is true, and it doesn't mean that it's false. It's basically just a thought. It's just another thought out of the 50,000 to 70,000 thoughts that we each think throughout the day. The only problem is that when you have panic and when you have anxiety, your focus moves more towards the fearful thoughts, moves more towards the negative thoughts, the obsessive thoughts, and less towards the positive and the optimistic thoughts. And that's going to take some time before you guys condition a new meaning and desensitize yourself and start turning off your anxiety switch. What I like to call is just basically a switch that's on and it's going full blast right now, and your panic is like a car alarm, and at the moment it's kind of being set off, just by a kind of a gentle wind, and a lot of people that gain hold of their anxiety after some time, nothing sets it off anymore. And that's what we're shooting for with this podcast, guys. I hope I've given you some inspiration today, some excellent tips that you guys can put to use starting today. And again, if you have any questions, anxietyexit.com. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast, guys, and download this episode so that you can really get a deeper understanding of what panic attacks are, what the panic cycle is, and how to handle them. Join our Facebook page, guys, under The Anxiety Guy, and ask me any questions on there. It's a great community, and I look forward to seeing you guys in episode number 8. Thanks again so much for joining me. I'll see you guys really soon. Take care.